You can either make excuses or you can make results.
Or you can get it done.
That's it. Like, I don't believe I could spend more time, and most people do this. They spend more time creating excuses rather than just doing it.
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
And that's really my aspect on it. I mean, technically speaking, when we were first even working on the intro for the Suffering Podcast, remember, and you were like, oh, we kind of have like this fire and flame thing. And I was like, well, we could do something like this. And now every time we open up intros, it's nice. It has this nice design.
Well, he did come up with that new.
Oh yeah, I did I'll tell you honestly. So I did a very rudimentary version of that, and then Drew took it to the next level,
yeah.
Where he synced the flames to the beat, and when it was a minute, if you go back into some of our newer or older video episodes, you'll see that
started. Yeah,
you'll see that full intro.
Kim DiPaola.
And
yeah,
the flames surround the logo and pop at the right time when the beats hit. Yeah. It was
the transitions that hit on. But so basically, that's like the perfect. What you just said is perfect. You have a great idea, and I see you trying to capture in the idea, and that's why whenever I'm working with anybody, I tell them, "Well, tell me your idea," because my idea is to try to capture the best of what you're seeing.
You take the ordinary, and you put some magic on it.
You know, he
turn it into the extraordinary.
He did that right here one night. Right after we did a show, I think he was talking about upgrading the intro to it. We were sitting right in the control room, and he just put the flames around it and worked on it from there.
I show you, and that's the difference. Like, you have to really. It's not so much, and I say this all the time. And you could go anywhere where somebody just hits record. That's anywhere. Anybody could go.
And I got to tell you, that's probably 99% of the studios around. It's just, okay, you want to record a podcast? Come in, go.
And this is the problem, and it's not just with anybody in most of the industry right now will be looking at a clock. The clock will be like, okay, this is going. It's been an hour, 61 minutes, 62. So they're going to pay for a second hour. They went over. They know it's an hour. That's more money on it. There's like a level of where people are forgetting that it's art, that you're creating something, that you're dealing with something that somebody envisions that they have. It is art. It is what you guys are creating every week. Every week, the Suffering Podcast, right, speaks one-on-one with people and helps them get through tough times. Truth. You two both have dealt with tough times in your life and still are coping and dealing with it. So
tough times every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday. I mean, listen, and then we deal with that, right? And so each week is a brand new episode. Each week is something new. And I say it all the time. I'm like, but each week we're capturing something new. It might be, somebody might have listened to all 100 episodes, right? But this might be somebody's first time seeing this episode. That's important.
I've listened to all 100.
So, he just listens to episode 9.
I've listened to all 100.
He listens to 9 and now 99.
I've listened to 900 episodes.
900
episode 90.
All those plays came from 99. So that's where it comes into like production. That's where you start producing a show, and you're no longer just.
But sometimes you have to polish a turd. Okay, and I know you're.
He does it for us every week.
Andrew
I know that.
Is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in your life, and he doesn't say anything bad about anybody. But I know in the back of your head, because you're human, you'll watch something, and you'll be like, "Yeah, that's bad," and then you got to go do your magic.
I do my best, and my wife, she says, "You really don't," and I'd be like, and 100%. I've a long time ago. I do my best to just be like, I'm not here to judge. You understand? I'm not. I'm here to try to make it happen, right? So yeah, you're going to have a couple interviews where you're sitting across the table and you're like, oh my God.
We've had them.
Why did we do this?
Yeah, listen, I know there's plenty of things that Andrew had to cut out and put on that cutting room floor, things that I said.
Well, sometimes when people slip, I'm like, we really can't. So that's got to be cut. Or you see,
you lose a lot of content. Yeah.
Or sometimes, and it's whenever I cut anything, I have to make sure that it's still following the trend of the conversation.
Right.
You can't cut and all of a sudden everybody's laughing. You're like, well, what did I miss in the joke?
Right.
Andrew also chimes in and tells us when to bring up our sponsors.
Yes.
Which it's time for.
It's just about time for a sponsor.
It's so,
right on cue.
The what you do is so important that we're having an event at the Grand Saloon, as you know very well, on the 21st of December. This episode will be airing just about that time. And you're going to be, Grand Saloon is 940 Van Houten Avenue. They've been very, very generous to us.
You got spam on the menu this week.
You had to figure out how to take something that could potentially be disastrous and make it sound like a show, because we're going to be recording now.
Yes.
And you're going to have all the background noise. And
so,
well, I have tools.
You have to figure that stuff out.
My toys.
And I hate doing this, but unfortunately, because of your knowledge base, I have to do this to you sometime where I just like hand you a bunch of pieces and like, Drew, I need help. I can't put this together.
Well, listen, I'm Reverie, and she'll tell you, I'm great at Tetris. So when I have to figure things out and I'm working on all these different boxes coming in my way, I'm like, it all just kind of clicks.
Spin it, bring it down.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's a little hard for me to explain. So when I tell people sometimes and they're like, well, you're like this, you're like that. And I'm like, no, it's because I could kind of see it. So even when you give me that set and I could see everything that's on the table and I'm like, okay.
It's a puzzle.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, what is it you want to get to? Well, this is what I would really like to get. Okay, cool. Then we don't need this. We don't need that. This is the main thing that's going to happen. We're going to push that up there. And then before you know it, we got rid of all the fat on the steak. And now we got a good meal.
But, you're the type of guy that could think on the fly pretty good, too. I mean, we sat here a couple times and he just, we're like, what are we going to do? And he's, I got to fix. Don't worry about it. Just sitting on the fly and fixing things right there.
Well, tonight, for instance. Tonight's a perfect example of you're not here because it's always perfect.
You weren't our scheduled guest.
I was not the scheduled. Shout out to not being the. I was not.
Hashtag not my guest.
Not my guest.
But tonight was an on the fly episode where you just had to figure stuff out. We don't have anybody behind the board.
We don't.
So it's you doing two jobs right now.
Yes.
Guest and yes. You still got to.
And the editing is going to be fun. Yes. The editing will be fun. Yes. But you know what? You can either make excuses or you can make results.
Or you can get it done.
That's it. Like, I don't believe I could spend more time, and most people do this. They spend more time creating excuses rather than just doing it. Just, I can't do this because of this, and I can't do this because of that. And if I wait and I'm like, oh my God, why don't you just try it?
I always say people complain more trying to get out of work than they do actually working.
Just do it. Just get the job done.
You know who does that is Verizon.
Verizon.
So
what's your beef with Verizon?
There's a team when I was working a road job.
So see, it's a past thing. It's a past thing.
I was working a road job for Verizon, and they had to put a new telephone pole. So when you put a new telephone pole in, you got to move the wires from one pole to the next pole. There's two different teams that do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I watched these two teams argue. And all the guy putting the telephone pole in, he was alone. He goes, I just need like 5 minutes of help.
Yes.
The wire team, that's not our job. And they argued for half an hour.
Yeah, when it could have been done.
And I'm standing there going, guys, just do something. I don't feel like standing out here anymore. 5 minutes. They finally gave in and helped them. 5 minutes, the pole was in, done. But instead of doing it 5 minutes, where tonight's episode, the scheduled guest, there was an issue. And I watched you and I said, Drew, what do you think about this? And we're just sitting in the control room. What do you think about it? Let's do this. We're here. Let's record this episode. We wanted to do this anyway. Next thing I know, you're gone. And you're setting up cameras. You're figuring out how this works. I got to clear memory off.
Clear this memory card. I got to clear that memory card. I got to do this.
Well, we could have easily sat back over there and said, well, guys, it's not happening tonight. You said it yourself. You're like, well, we're all here. Why don't we make something happen? And I'm just kind of like,
we've done this before.
Yeah, let's make something happen. Yeah. Like I said, we could have sat over there. We could have gotten upset. We could have gotten, this didn't happen. This didn't work out. That's not that.
Well, I'll still be upset. There's plenty of time after.
Yeah.
To be upset.
But you know what?
A lot of time to be upset now.
I say it all the time. I'm not putting my energy into that. Right. I'm not putting my time into that because now that person gained that from me. I'm not giving you that. That's why I'm just like, no. I'm like, it's okay. You could kind of move on.
If you were a new engineer,
yes,
and we were new podcasters, we would not be recording.
No.
Oh,
I'd be home already.
Yeah.
No, I think a new engineer, especially new engineers, need to learn a lot of patience.
So where do you see your profession going? You're the proprietor of A&J Media Studios. I know your wife Katia is super involved in this whole thing.
Yes.
Where do you see this going? Is podcasting going to be the main focus?
I want to be able to grow into really more into the full network. I think there's a lot of room in the podcasting industry. I don't think it's just
Well, there's no
one.
competition. We're not in competition with anybody.
Like we say all the time, it's not like a radio show. It's not like we have
We're
a
sharing
time slot.
space.
We're not on 6 to 10 a.m.
The beauty about podcasts is that we say it all the time, right? People are listening to a specific niche. That's what they're listening to. And just like anything good, if all of a sudden, was it like Mike's Hot Honey? Just like anything good, right?
Hashtag Mike's Hot Honey.
That's correct.
You put it on, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, this works on here, this works on that, this works on wings.
Mike's
this
Hot
works
Honey
on-
works on everything.
So that's the point. So you,
We had this whole conversation before.
right? So if you turn around and you have like this niche, it's kind of the same thing, right? You like something, you're more than likely to listen to a similar show, and it's very simple. So the idea of being able to help people, and regardless of people, oh, Drew, no, you're really helping people.
Mm.
So we start with the Suffering Podcast. I think the Suffering Podcast is great. In the future, as we grow, maybe we branch. Maybe we find a podcast that, okay, we have one that talks about mental health. Okay, maybe
The
there's
Suffering Podcast Network.
the Suffering Podcast Network. And then you bring people physical, right? Then you get somebody that maybe just focus on, hey, we're only talking about physical. Da 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 da. We focus, the Suffering Podcast says, hey, da da da. Then we go to there. And you could just branch out, diet, eating, da da da. And we're helping people
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day. And I feel like we could probably use a little bit more of that in the world.
Yeah. And how many podcasts episodes in your understanding have you actually done in your career?
Like me just solo recording?
Yeah.
Oof, I don't know. It's been a while now.
You say more than 100?
Yes. I could easily say more than 100.
Well, yeah, it's got to be. I mean, we're
Well, he hasn't done all 100 of ours yet.
no,
but
but you've done 30. What 30?
36.
39?
just on the Suffering Podcast alone.
Right.
That's not counting on we did the Elite Show,
Mm-hmm.
John Elite. There's a couple of other shows I could say, but they're still being produced. Shout out to Your History, Your Story.
Mm-hmm.
We did.
With
We helped
James-
there
with the
James
Gardeners.
and the Gardeners. Let me see. We also were doing Podcasters
Podfest?
Podfest. So
We're all
there's
going down to
we're all
Podfest.
going down to Podfest. So there's so many different shows that I worked with and been on, but each one was different in their own sense. Like I said, I really do take that new approach on it because that's just really
Well,
I
you
would
give
like to
sound
treat it.
advice. That's my biggest compliment I can give you. You
Thank
give
you.
sound
He's a
advice.
great springboard.
Yeah, ideas need to be cultivated, just
Yeah.
like a garden. So we'll sit around before the guest gets here and we'll throw out an idea. Well, what think of this, and then Mike will say something, you'll say something, and it's a round robin type of thing until we cultivate it enough where it starts to grow. And once we get it down and we focus on it, that's and you're part of that team. I mean,
Well, look at the transition. And anybody who's still just doing just a straight podcast, think about the transition. The transition to video just happened in June. We laid out a
May.
plan. May we started
May, yeah.
recording,
May
but
we
it aired in June,
right.
right? Started in May. From June, July, August, September, October, November, we're just 6 months in. Within 6 months, the show has now over 5,000 subscribers. Every episode gets 5,000 plus plays because some do 10, some do 13, some do 17. Think about all the interesting guests that have come down. It's huge growth.
There's a nice library of work out there for you, not only for yourself, but for us as well. We're super appreciative of the guidance because pretty much everything you've said has happened. And I fought you on a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's where being open-minded in this industry is. You have to be able to. So,
By the
I'm
way,
gonna-
it's not my fault that I fought you on the intro.
what?
I come
Whose
from an
fault is it?
era of long guitar solos and intros.
Yes, long intros. I'm with you. No, I love having a 1 minute intro on a song beforehand. Maybe
That's-
they're talking, maybe they're doing that.
That's
but
what you do. And that was where I
you ever
that's
heard of
where
a
my
salsa
site
song? You know
was.
how long a salsa song plays for?
I love watching
Yeah.
Telemundo.
It's like forever that they
Yeah.
go on.
We'd have about 2 minutes of content after the whole salsa song played.
But think about it like this. Here, let me break it down. You have an editor, right? The content creators, you guys are creating the episode. You do the intros. Okay, that's one part of the show. Now you have the editor. The editor goes through, cleans up the audio, does the work, right? The mixing engineer, you go back, you do a mix on it. making sure it sounds nice. The producer, he's watching everything on it. Shame on me for bumping my
Guests,
own.
try not to hit
know.
the microphone.
Yeah, shame on me.
He's always,
Jeez.
he's always in our ear. Stop hitting the microphone.
Stop hitting the microphone.
Yeah,
You know,
I'm at my own fault. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Oh, my God. Did you really take a pen and do that? All right, so I'm going to pause it right here to edit the whole thing out.
Hold on.
Oh, my God. That's saved for later. But, so there's different parts to the puzzle, and everybody has it. I think the hardest thing is when you have to let go of that little baby and say, hey, you're in charge of this now.
It's hard to do.
Oh,
It's extraordinarily hard to do. I know that from my own perspective.
Yeah.
For season 3, we're revamping certain things in here. We're revamping certain things all over.
Yes.
And it's hard for me to let that stuff go because I put a lot of work into this stuff.
It's like giving up the basement.
Yeah, that was hard. It was extraordinarily hard. But I knew in order to grow, I knew what we had to do. We had to bring in a pro. We had to come to A&J Media in order to make our vision come true.
And all this really, and special thanks. I know we started saying, but to my wife, Katia, because when we were creating that video for Blue, right? You guys should know, and I said this was on the moment. Everything that happened in like such a sync. I want you guys to know that I wasn't scheduled to be there for that video shoot.
That I didn't know.
The day before, and once again to my wife, she's like, hey, you really got to come meet this guy, Dan. I come down, I'm like, I'm not expecting this. I'm in regular clothes. I'm not shaved. I'm not nothing. I just come up. I'm like, hey, it's good to meet Papa. It's like, I have this idea for the video. And the moment he started talking to me, everything started running. And I'm like, yeah, but okay. And he was like, I'm going to do it. He was like, I'm going to do it with my phone. And in my mind, I'm like, no, you're not.
Don't do that.
I'm like, you're not going to do it because I understand the bigger purpose. All right. I go down and I just bring my cameras in case. I go to the scene. I see everything set up. I'm like, no, we're going to record. So that day when you saw me for the first time, it was all boom, boom, boom set up. Like it was all it just laid itself out that way.
And that was like February or something.
Yeah.
February of
Like
this
you said,
year.
we had just gotten back from Florida.
And, now we're here. Me personally, there's a couple other studios in the area, but me personally, I need to have a personal relationship with somebody. So when Mike and I were discussing coming to video, I'm like, well, listen, I got the place. The only place that I would like to record is with you because when I first met you, I could tell your passion, like your passion bleeds right through in everything that
Thank
you
you.
say. You've been doing this for quite some time.
Yes.
And so I just see onward and upward. You're doing different rooms. You're building audio booths, sound booths, which I don't have to come in here and do the openings anymore. I just do them right in there.
The idea is I want you to be able to walk in and to do just like that. Hey, if you want to do an audio book or an intro or anything like that, you just walk right into one booth and it'll be all set.
Well, so one of the things that my kids don't listen to this anyway. So one my youngest son loves to sing.
Okay.
And I've already talked to you about this. Is I think what I'm going to get him for Christmas is I want a studio song.
Yeah, come
I want
record a
one
demo.
studio song that he will have forever.
One of my proudest moments was being able to record my father.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
He came down. I have some magical moments I could tell you about. He came down and he asked me, he said, what do you want to do on your birthday? I said, well, I would really like to record you. He said, that's really what you want to do for your birthday? I said, come down to the studio.
My kids always try to record me in the bathroom.
Oh, man. Well, that's for the show, the suffering of poop.
They think it's hilarious.
But, he came down and he sang a guitar and he's playing it and da-da-da. And I'm like, boom, it's a moment. There was, listen.
Well, that's what you're doing. You're capturing moments in time.
Yeah.
Oh, it's magic. There was, may rest in peace, Kathia's, I think it's Kathia's grandfather when he passed, had all these old cassettes and he used to play the accordion and he would sing. And they asked me, they said,
Costa
well, what?
Rican playing the accordion.
Yeah, you know what? He was a very great man because he taught all of his kids how to play instruments and all of his kids, he pretty much was the Spanish Jackson 5. Okay, let's call it what it was, but I think it was like the Jackson 9 because there's a lot of them.
Did he live in the Nevermind Ranch?
Yeah.
The Jackson Quattro.
Listen, but so
Cinco.
I saw
Cinco,
videos,
whatever.
and he's so super cool. So he does all this, and Katia tells me that he does all this without anybody teaching him. He learned himself. So she brings me these tapes, and I'm like, well, what can you do with them? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, the audio's kind of Think about the time. Think about what I have. And it's just recordings. I was able to take that audio, clean it up, fix it up. I was able to put a demo for him and hand that to his kids.
That's salvaging stuff.
To Katya's mother and father. And when you talk about emotion and a feeling, you have a version of your father captured that you thought that maybe would never even sound, because I cleaned it and
So there's
beautiful.
There's something that I heard the other day that is slowly going away because of people like you. They say when people die,
Mhm.
a library is burned to the ground. Okay, all those
That's what we're saying.
memories, all those experiences, they're all gone. With people such as yourself who record these shows, they are now making sure those libraries, while they are charred and some of the items in there are destroyed,
Yes.
not all of it's destroyed. There is stuff that moves on.
You know, when someone passes, you generally just have pictures of them.
That's it.
You know, I mean, I would love to hear my mother's voice one more time.
I have 5 pictures of my great-grandfather that I never knew existed until the family just put their heads together and we all sort of put them together. You're really, when people die, like Mike said, that you pretty much only have pictures left. And you're saving those things. You're making sure those libraries don't burn to the ground.
In those sense, even the pictures, when they do like pictures restorations, you're seeing your family in a light that hasn't been seen before. And so you have these, that's why that's why I tell people it really is creative. It's what you're making. And every single time somebody steps in, whether it's a demo, whether it's a group of friends sitting on a table and saying, hey, remember when we had that podcast and we were doing da-da-da? Or remember when we started, ba-ba-ba-ba-ba? And you're like, yeah, play the video on that. Oh, Dad, you didn't have a podcast 20 years from now. I did have a podcast. Check it out. It was on YouTube.
Could you imagine when we die, our voices are still going to be out there?
Forever.
I
told my kids, and they laugh at me. I was like, listen, I don't know if it's going to be ready at the time, but if I could get like a hologram made, like Superman's dad.
Tupac.
Yeah,
They brought Tupac back.
Yeah, just have that whole thing where I just kind of hover around and teach you kids. Be like, no, stop doing that. You're messing up. No, don't do that. Oh, shut up. No.
You got to start recording yourself now.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I got to do all the recording now.
Sit down and shut up.
It just can't be that one music video.
Don't talk back to your.
Sit your ass down. It's like, how come this sounds so familiar? Sit your ass down.
Dad, stop it. Dad, stop it.
Stop touching that.
How can somebody find A&J Media?
A&J Media, you could connect with us online, anjmedia.live.
Can we get the producer to put the lower thirds up so we can
Right here.
them?
Listen,
We're
not even going to have our logo on there. It's just going to be the A&J logo on
It's
there.
going to be right here. So this is where the lower third comes in for those who don't know. And the lower third is that's a perfect example, something as simple as that. That it takes a little finesse. You put it in at the right time. It's meaningful to take the presentation up. And some don't even want to do it. Is what it is.
Well,
It's what it is.
we certainly appreciate you, and if you want to look at what Drew can do, just go to episode 99, The Suffering of 9D9, which was recorded with Mike and I sitting like this, and our logo looks beautiful.
That really does look sharp.
And that's a blank, for those of you who know, that's a blank wall. And
Yes.
It doesn't look like it was like superimposed up there. It
No,
looked like
it
it
was
was
highlights on it and everything. It was really good.
It's all about the opacity.
Drew, I was just going to say, Drew, I got to tell you, I can't thank you enough from the bottom of my heart for everything you've done for us. I mean, you've been excellent. You've made us what we are today. Not that we're much.
No,
But
you
made us-
guys, I know we joke a little bit. Listen, you guys are not just, you guys are big. And I don't care what you guys say, because you guys are big, because you're impacting people in a positive way every single time.
I get a lot of joy out of coming in here every week. And I know
Joking around.
I get it's fun time for me. And some guys go out to a bar, they hang out with their boys or whatever. I enjoy coming in, sitting down with a guest, talking to you beforehand, and we know exactly. We're starting to work with each other for 6 in the short 6 months. I think we figure out really good. I know you were sitting behind the board, and you know when I'm going to talk. You kind of know when he's going to talk, and you know where to put the cameras and the right. You just got everything figured out.
You know when I'm going to talk, but not what I'm going to say.
Yeah, you got to get ready for the now. I'm like, so what is Mike going to say? And is the guest going to get across the table today?
I told Kevin, that almost happened. I need a speed bump between my brain and my mouth.
Just
That's
a little.
what I need.
So the next time that happens, what you need to do is just let him talk and like the old samurai movies.
Oh, where it gives like a delay.
Just dub it in.
Mike's always dubbed in. He's never on time. His voice is
Godzilla movies.
his voice is always.
When the mouth keeps moving, it got.
I'm gonna record Mike in the voice. I'm like, so Mike, this is what you said during this part. I'm gonna record you in that booth. You're gonna come over, say this, and I'm just gonna voice it over. Okay.
So this is episode 103.
103.
All right, so we're gonna have to start hashtagging episode 103.
103.
Do you know the episode? We're gonna do episode 103. It's gonna come out awesome.
This is gonna be the best produced episode ever.
The transition is always gonna be smooth. There's gonna have moments.
But the problem is, there's only one camera the whole time. It's gonna be
Little word to the wise: if you want a well-produced episode, have your producer in as a guest.
Yes.
That's the trick.
It's gonna be like, how come it's all color graded? It looks like a movie. It's gonna have the bars up and down.
So now when we hit episode 203, it's going to be the suffering of 103 in episode 2.
Yeah. I better have an assistant back there by then.
Yeah, that's where we're going. And I told you what our ultimate goal is for the Suffering Podcast. Now, this is not a joke. I want one room in your studio dedicated to the Suffering Podcast.
Well, we're gonna do it just like Run DMC did with Aerosmith. We're just gonna knock the wall down. And be like, this is our okay. We're gonna walk with a mic stand and
just say
break it through.
Walk this way.
Yes, I did.
Andrew, I can't thank you so much for doing this. This is a long time coming because I really wanted to have you in here. I know you deal with a lot of crap that people don't realize. People see the lights, people see the good production and stuff, and think it just happens. But there's a lot of work that goes on behind.
We don't just turn on the lights and then turn them off and go home.
No,
There's
never.
a lot more behind the scene work that goes on.
So as always, the last question of the night is always you spent this time in this. I have to call it a passion of yours.
Yes.
Through audio engineering and through video podcasting. You've learned a lot. You've learned the good. You've learned the bad. What do you think the suffering of a podcast producer has taught you?
You know, it's funny because you're always behind the board when you hear that. So this is the first time being in front, and I'm like, oh.
Is it as impactful?
I'm like, yeah. I'm just like, wait, this
You want to
all.
go behind a window and they'll ask you
Yeah, I'm
that?
like, this all sounds familiar to me. What's the suffering? That pretty much, I think what the suffering has taught me is that through the suffering comes beauty. That you sometimes have to endure, because what a lot of people don't get is even as a business, when you're starting, you really have to have a leap of faith. You kind of have to go in. So there was times, and I'll say it right now, that there were times where you're like, oh man, is this going to work? Is this going to happen? You know, you're counting money, you're counting that, but you kind of move forward with it. So you need that faith. That's just the truth of it. But the suffering really, what you go through, makes you. And it's going to make you even better than what you were.
I think you have the unique ability to envision the invisible and create the impossible.
Thank you.
And I'm going to leave it with that, and that's going to end it.
That's the way to kiss his ass to end the show.
Well, I have to. Otherwise, he's going to make me look like shit, and all of a sudden you're going to look good.
You can't make me look good.
I actually have a couple.
Yes, he does. He was showing them to me the other day. That's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast, the suffering of a podcast producer with our very good friend, Andrew Santiago. And as always, let's think about all the stuff that we learn. Some lessons are learned on the job. Your value is not in what you know when things go right, but when things go wrong. Make that ordinary extraordinary, but most importantly, capture moments in time. And that's going to do it for this episode. Follow us on social media, on TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, all the social media outlets. Follow Mike at Mike_Failace. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson. And of course, follow the Suffering Podcast. Don't forget to listen before you watch. Our episodes air on audio every Sunday. And if you like what we're putting out, make sure you hit like and subscribe, ring the bell so you get notified. And we're going to see you on the next episode of Suffering Podcast.